The vote took less than 12 seconds. 12 seconds to override 200 years of silence. The Galactic Council chamber was bright and calm, floating above the capital world in a ring of glass and silver light. Representatives from 37 species watched the central screen as a final tally appeared. Override approved. For 2 centuries, humans had refused full archive access. They had never shouted, never threatened, never acted offended. Every time the Council requested deeper data access, the same response came back. It is not necessary. No explanation, no emotion, just those 4 words. Most species assumed it was pride, or secrecy, or military arrogance. Young strategist Corvell did not believe in coincidence. He stood from his seat, tall and sharp-eyed, his voice steady. "They are hiding something," he said. "No civilization refuses transparency for 200 years without reason." Some elders dismissed him at first. Humans were traitors, engineers, mediators. They had never started a galactic war. Their fleets were modest. Their expansion was slow and careful. But that was the problem. Too careful, too stable, too quiet. Corvell continued. "We have scanned their fleets. We have studied their borders. Nothing suggests aggression. And yet every major conflict in the last century ended before full escalation. Patterns suggest intervention." Murmurs filled the chamber. He finished with one final sentence. "If they are hiding military power, we must know." The High Speaker turned toward the chamber. "Proceed with emergency override." A ripple of approval lights flashed around the circular hall. In orbit above Earth, Council AI systems engaged with human archive satellites. Layers of encryption unfolded like sealed doors, unlocking one by one. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the main display changed. Black background, white letters. Human strategic records, level black. The words felt heavier than expected. Several representatives shifted in their seats. "Level black," one whispered. Corvell felt a flicker of satisfaction. He had been right. There was something deeper. "Open it," he said. The system processed a request. Before access was granted, a new message appeared. "Accessing this file will permanently alter diplomatic relations." Silence fell across the chamber. Some representatives glanced at one another. One elder gave a low, amused sound. "Dramatic," she said. "Humans have always enjoyed theatrics." Light laughter spread across the hall. The High Speaker raised a hand. "It is a warning. Nothing more." Corvell kept his eyes on the screen. A small, unexpected tension tightened in his chest. Permanent alteration, not retaliation, not consequence. Alteration. He dismissed the feeling. "If they intended harm," he said calmly, "they would not allow us to access it all." The chamber agreed. "Proceed," the High Speaker ordered. The archive opened. The screen went completely black. Not loading, not buffering. Black. The chamber lights seemed brighter against it. Seconds passed. 5, 10, 15. The Council AI confirmed connection was stable. "Is this a malfunction?" someone asked. Then the black screen flickered. 3 words appeared in white text. "Containment protocol. Active." The chamber fell silent. No laughter this time. Corvell leaned forward slightly. "Containment?" he repeated under his breath. A soft tone echoed through the hall. Not from Council systems. From the human network itself. A secondary message began to form beneath the first. This archive documents preventative actions taken to maintain galactic stability. Preventative actions. Corvell's throat felt dry. The text continued. Interventions were conducted without public disclosure to prevent escalation. Across the chamber, representatives began pulling up their own historical records. Conflicts, fleet failures, sudden ceasefires that had never been fully explained. A border war between 2 mining coalitions that ended when both sides lost targeting systems at the same time. A carrier group that suffered unexplained navigation collapse hours before engaging a rival fleet. A weapons research station that shut down permanently after a mysterious power cascade. At the time, all of it had been labeled coincidence. Technical malfunction. Bad luck. The human archive scrolled. Total major conflicts prevented, 47. Estimated lives preserved, 14.3 billion. Corvell felt the room shift, not physically, emotionally. Humans had never claimed credit for these events, never requested repayment, never issued threats afterward. Another line appeared. Humanity does not seek control. Stability is sufficient. The high speaker's voice came out softer than before. They were containing us. The phrase echoed inside Corvell's mind. Containment protocol. Not against enemies. Against chaos. The archive paused. One final message appeared. If humanity ever ceases intervention, projected instability index rises 63% within 3 standard cycles. Simulations began forming on smaller side screens. Trade collapses. Alliance fractures. Rapid militarization spikes. No dramatic explosions. Just systems failing one by one. The chamber felt colder. Corvell's earlier confidence drained away, replaced by something he had not expected. Dependence. They had assumed humans were hiding weapons. Instead, they had been hiding responsibility. The main display shifted again. A final line appeared. This file was sealed to preserve trust, not fear. The word stayed on the screen. No threats followed. No demands. Just quiet information. Corvell slowly leaned back in his seat. Around him, the most powerful leaders in the galaxy sat without speaking. 200 years. Humans had said it was not necessary. Corvell finally understood what they meant. The silence in the chamber was heavier than any weapon could have been. And for the first time since the vote, no one felt like laughing. The chamber remained quiet long after the first file finished loading. No one spoke. No one laughed anymore. Corvell stood still, staring at the projection in front of him. He had expected weapon designs. Secret fleets hidden in dark space. Plans to conquer the Council when the moment was right. That was what powerful species did. They prepared. They waited. They struck. Open the next section, the high speaker said softly. The archive shifted. New folders appeared. Intervention logs, sealed operations, de-escalation events, undisclosed. Conflict prevention records, classified. Corvell felt his pulse rise. This had to be it. Human military records. The hidden strength. The secret advantage. Display conflict prevention records, he ordered. The screen changed. A long list of dates appeared. At first, they meant nothing. Then the archive began matching them with known historical events. Year 4821, the Threx border crisis. Council record. Weapons malfunction halted escalation. Human archive note. Strategic signal interference deployed. Escalation probability reduced from 78% to 12%. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Another entry appeared. Year 4833, mining coalition fleet standoff. Council record. Navigation system collapse on both sides. Human archive note. Coordinated guidance disruption to prevent weapons lock. More dates followed. Year 4840, Varelian expansion conflict. Year 4846, Outer Rim resource dispute. Year 4852, Tri-System Alliance mobilization. Each one had ended suddenly. At the time, analysts blamed software failures, solar interference, technical coincidence. Now the truth stood in simple text. Human intervention successful. Escalation prevented. Corvell felt something shift inside him. They were there, he whispered. The archive continued scrolling. Total recorded direct conflict interventions, 112. Wars fully prevented, 9. Major military escalations halted, 47. The numbers were calm, clean, organized. No dramatic language, no pride, no celebration, just results. A representative from the Northern Spiral Alliance leaned forward. This is impossible. We would have detected fleet movements. The archive responded automatically. Interventions conducted using minimal presence strategy, stealth deployment, remote systems interference, no territorial violations. Corvell felt his earlier argument collapsing. Humans did not have massive fleets. They did not need them. Cross-reference, he said quickly. Match every major war in the last century. The system process. One by one, red markers appeared over the galactic map. Each red marker represented a war that had nearly begun, each one linked to a quiet human intervention. The chamber watched in silence. Year 4871. Coalition of 3 empires preparing strike force. Human note, command chain disruption. Strike authorization withdrawn. Year 4879. Deep core naval mobilization. Human note, targeting networks disabled for 6.2 hours. Diplomacy window reopened. Year 4884. Border fortress activation. Human note, reactor safety override triggered remotely. Offensive systems powered down. The map slowly filled with red. Not battles, not victories, preventions. Every major galactic war in the last century had something in common. It had almost happened, and then it hadn't, because humans had stepped in, quietly, without permission, without announcement, without asking for reward. Corvell felt cold. They never told us. One elder said. Another answered. They never needed to. The archive displayed a final summary. Public disclosure intentionally avoided to prevent dependency. Credit withheld to preserve balance of power perception. No credit taken. No public announcement. No threats. Just quiet action. Corvell's mind replayed 200 years of human behavior. Their neutral votes. Their calm speeches. Their refusal to escalate. He had mistaken restraint for weakness. They had not been passive. They had been watching, managing, adjusting, like unseen hands steadying a structure before it collapsed. The high speaker's voice trembled slightly. So every time we believed we had solved a crisis, Corvell finished the sentence. They had already stopped it. A long silence followed. One final folder opened on its own. Projected outcome, no human intervention. The simulation began running. Without interference, the Threx border crisis escalated into full war within 3 months. The mining coalition conflict expanded across 6 systems. The tri-system mobilization triggered retaliatory alliances. Trade routes collapsed. Civilian systems failed. The death estimates climbed steadily. The simulation stopped. Projected instability increased. 63%. The chamber lights seemed dimmer now. Corvell sat down slowly. All this time, the Council believed humans were simply cooperative, simply reasonable, simply careful. They had assumed humans followed rules because they lacked strength. Now the truth was simple. Humans followed rules because they understood what happened when no one did. They were managing us, Corvell said quietly. No one argued. No one laughed. For a century, the galaxy had believed it was stable because it had matured, because it had evolved beyond endless war, because it had grown wiser. But the record showed something else. It had been guided, not ruled, not controlled, guided from the shadows. And the most unsettling part was not that humans had the ability. It was that they had chosen not to use it openly. Corvell looked at the black archive screen again. 200 years of polite refusal. It is not necessary. Now he understood. If the galaxy had known sooner, it would have feared them. Instead, humans chose something harder. They carried the weight quietly. And for the first time in his career, Corvell wondered what would happen if they ever decided to stop. No one asked to close the archive. No one wanted to. The chamber felt different now. Smaller. Heavier. Corvell stood slowly as the next section unlocked. The title appeared in plain white letters. If humanity ever chose not to intervene. A quiet wave of unease moved through the council. That is unnecessary, one elder muttered. But no one stopped it. Run the simulation, Corvell said. The system obeyed. The galactic map appeared in full color. Trade routes glowing like thin lines of light between stars. Borders shimmered. Fleet positions blinked in calm patterns. Then the label appeared in the corner. Human intervention. Disabled. At first, nothing changed. 10 seconds passed. Then small flickers began at the edges of the map. A minor trade dispute between 2 outer systems. In normal history, it had ended in negotiation. Now, without interference, the simulation showed something different. A fleet mobilized. Another fleet responded. A warning shot was misread. Weapons fired. The conflict spread. The trade line between those systems turned red. Escalation probability, 72%. The archive noted calmly. The chamber grew still. The simulation continued. Another region flashed. A long-standing border tension between three empires. In reality, the situation had cooled decades ago after sudden technical failures stopped weapon systems from activating. Now, without human disruption, the fleets engaged. The simulation accelerated. One battle became 3. 3 became 12. All within 18 months. Trade networks flickered. Supply chains broke. Food shipments delayed. Civilian systems destabilized. The glowing web of commerce across the galaxy dimmed, piece by piece. Pause, the high speaker whispered. But Corvell did not look away. Continue. The map zoomed out. 3 major empires entered full war by the second standard year. Alliance treaties triggered secondary mobilizations. Neutral zones became battlegrounds. Energy grids failed under strain. Refugee flows overwhelmed stable systems. Projected civilian casualties began counting upward, not from a single superweapon, not from a secret fleet, from ordinary war. War left to grow unchecked. The number passed 1 billion, then 2, then higher. The chamber felt colder than space itself. Corvell felt a slow realization settle over him. "They're stabilizing us," he whispered. No one disagreed. The simulation shifted again. 5 years without human intervention. The galactic economy fractured into isolated clusters. Technological progress slowed as research worlds were forced into defense. Piracy increased. Extremist factions rose. Weapons manufacturing spiked across every major power. The instability index climbed to levels not seen in recorded history. And through all of it, one variable remained unchanged. Human fleets remained stationary. Human borders remained closed. Human systems remained stable. They were not conquering. They were not attacking. They were simply absent. The absence was enough. The simulation stopped automatically. Projected instability increased. 63% within 3 cycles. Long-term collapse probability, 41%. The screen faded back to black. A final message began to type across the display. Humanity does not rule because control is inefficient. Stability is sufficient. The words were simple. No pride, no threat, just a statement. Corvell felt his earlier assumptions crumble completely. He had believed humans were hiding weapons. Secret armadas waiting beyond scan space. Plans to dominate the council when the time was right. Instead, they had hidden something far heavier. Responsibility. They had seen the pattern long ago. Every species believed itself rational. Every empire believed it could stop before full war. But history showed otherwise. Small conflicts grew. Pride escalated. Fear multiplied. Humans had learned that lesson on their own world long before they reached the stars. And when they joined the galaxy, they chose not to repeat it. They watched. They calculated. They intervened only when necessary. Quietly, precisely, without recognition, without reward. The high speaker leaned back slowly. "So all this time," she said softly, "we thought we had grown beyond war." Corvell answered without turning from the screen. "No, we were being held above it." A deep silence settled across the chamber. Not fear of invasion, not fear of attack. A different fear. Dependence. If humans ever chose to stop, if they decided the galaxy was no longer worth the effort, the structure would begin to crack within months. The realization was almost unbearable. They were not afraid of human power. They were afraid of human absence. Corvell finally lowered his gaze. "They were never hiding strength," he said quietly. "They were hiding the weight they carry." The archive screen remained dark, the final message still glowing faintly. Humanity does not rule because control is inefficient. Stability is sufficient. In that moment, every leader in the chamber understood the same truth. Humans did not dominate the galaxy because they did not need to. They had already shaped it from the shadows, and they had done it not for control, but to keep everyone else from destroying themselves. The chamber was no longer arguing loudly. The earlier confidence was gone. Voices were low now, careful. Some members demanded the archive be sealed again. Others feared what it meant if it stayed open. A few quietly questioned how long humans had been watching them. Corvell stood near the center, listening but not speaking. They had wanted answers. Now they had them, and the answers were heavier than any weapon. The High Speaker raised her hand. We will suspend further access until we determine. The chamber lights flickered. A soft tone echoed through the hall. Incoming transmission. Source, Earth. The entire council froze. No request was sent, one technician said. The transmission did not ask for permission. It connected. The central screen shifted from black to a simple image. A human, Adrian Vale. He stood in a quiet room with no visible guards, no symbols of power behind him, just a plain wall and steady lighting. He did not look angry. He did not look afraid. He looked calm, almost patient. For a moment, no one spoke. Then he began. "You were never forbidden from knowing," Adrian said, his voice steady and clear. The chamber listened without interruption. "You were simply not ready to understand." Corvell felt those words settle into the silence. There was no accusation in them, no insult, just truth. Adrian continued. "When humanity first left our world, we carried more than technology. We carried history." The screen shifted slightly, showing faint images behind him. Old human cities, smoke rising from battlefields long past, maps covered in borders that no longer existed. "We evolved through centuries of internal conflict," Adrian said. "Wars between nations, wars between ideologies, wars fueled by fear, pride, and misunderstanding." The images faded. "We learned something no young civilization understands at first." He paused briefly. "Winning wars is easy." The words hung in the air. Corvell felt several council members shift uncomfortably. Adrian's expression did not change. "Managing peace is harder." Silence filled the chamber. "We learned that destroying an enemy does not remove conflict. It creates new forms of it. It spreads instability. It multiplies suffering." He folded his hands calmly in front of him. "When we joined the galactic community, we recognized familiar patterns. Border tensions, resource disputes, military pride, defensive alliances that look very much like offensive preparations. A few representatives lowered their gaze. "We did not intervene because we wish to control you," Adrian said. "We intervened because we recognized the path you were walking." The screen behind him briefly showed the same simulation map the council had just watched. Trade networks collapsing, empires at war, civilian systems failing. Adrian's voice remained level. "We have walked that path before." Corvell felt something inside him shift again. The humans had not acted out of superiority. They had acted out of memory. Adrian stepped slightly closer to the camera. "You believe we had power." His eyes were steady. "We did not hide power from you." The chamber felt very small. "We hit what happens when we stop using it." No threat followed. No raised voice. Just a statement. The meaning was clear. If humans chose not to stabilize, if they chose not to intervene, the galaxy would return to its natural state. Fragmented, volatile, unstable. The High Speaker finally found her voice. "Why not tell us?" she asked quietly. "Why not trust us with the truth?" Adrian answered without hesitation. "Because civilizations that feel protected become careless." The words were simple. "Stability must feel earned," he continued. "If you believe we were solving every crisis, you would stop solving them yourselves." Corvell felt a sharp realization. Humans had not wanted recognition. They had wanted growth. "We chose the harder path," Adrian said. "To guide without ruling. To stabilize without dominating. To intervene without claiming credit." He looked directly into the camera. "We do not seek to lead the galaxy." The statement felt real. We seek to ensure it survives long enough to lead itself. The transmission did not end immediately. There was one final pause. Adrian's voice softened slightly. We will not punish you for opening the archive. A small ripple of relief passed through the chamber. But now you understand. He gave a faint nod. The responsibility has never been ours alone. The screen faded. The transmission ended. No dramatic cutoff. No warning alarms. Just silence. Corvell stood still, staring at the empty display. The arrogance that had filled the chamber hours earlier was gone. In its place was something deeper. Fear, yes, but not fear of invasion. Fear of failure. Humans had not positioned themselves above the galaxy. They had positioned themselves beneath it, holding it steady. And now the Council knew. They were not protected by hidden weapons. They were protected by hidden restraint. Corvell finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. They never wanted us to fear them. No one responded, because for the first time, they understood. Fear had never been the goal. Understanding was. The Council reconvened the next cycle. The mood was no longer tense. It was careful. No one spoke loudly. No one mocked human caution anymore. The archive remained closed on the main screen, its dark surface reflecting the faces of the leaders who had once laughed at the warning. The High Speaker stood first. On behalf of the Galactic Council, she said slowly, we acknowledge our error. The words felt heavy but necessary. We misjudged humanity's silence. A formal message was transmitted to Earth, not a demand, not a request for access, an apology. It was short, clear, honest. Hours later, Adrian Vale appeared again on the central display. No dramatic entrance, no guards, no symbols of power, just the same calm human in the same quiet room. The High Speaker did not hesitate this time. If you can control everything from the shadows, she asked, why not lead openly? The question echoed across the chamber. It was not accusation anymore. It was genuine confusion. Adrian listened without interrupting. Then he answered, because guardians who demand recognition become rulers. He paused briefly, and rulers eventually become threats. The words settled deeply. Many species in the chamber had risen to power through dominance, through conquest, through force. Leadership had always meant control, but humans had chosen something else. We do not wish to sit above you, Adrian continued. We wish to stand beside you. He explained that the archive would not be resealed. Transparency reforms would begin immediately. Shared infrastructure oversight between humans and council systems. Joint crisis monitoring programs. Open simulation access. Not to prove power, but to distribute responsibility. No dominance, Adrian said. No punishment. No threats. The simplicity of it felt almost unreal. Humanity could have demanded authority. They could have used fear. They could have positioned themselves as necessary rulers. Instead, they offered cooperation, shared burden. The High Speaker bowed her head slightly. Then we accept partnership, she said. The transmission ended peacefully. No applause followed, just quiet understanding. Over the following cycles, new joint monitoring systems were established. Conflict detection networks were shared. Early warning simulations became open access to all major powers. For the first time, stabilization was no longer invisible. It was collaborative. Weeks later, in a quieter chamber far from the main hall, a young cadet stood beside Corvell. The archive screen remained dark in front of them. The cadet looked up at him. What were humans really hiding? He asked. Corvell studied the blank display for a long moment. He remembered the laughter before the override, the shock of the simulations, the calm voice of Adrian Vale. He answered slowly. Not weapons. The cadet waited. Not fleets. The room felt still. Not conquest. Corvell stepped closer to the sealed archive panel. He could almost see the reflection of his earlier self in its surface. Confident, certain, slightly arrogant. He spoke one final time. They were hiding how fragile we are without them. The cadet frowned slightly. Then why show us at all? Corvell allowed himself a faint, thoughtful expression. Because guardians do not protect forever. He looked at the wider galactic map, glowing softly on the wall nearby. Trade routes steady. Borders calm. They protect until others learn how. The cadet nodded slowly. Understanding came not as fear, but as responsibility. Far across space, human fleets continued their quiet patrols. Not ruling, not commanding, not demanding gratitude. Just watching. Stabilizing when necessary. Allowing growth when possible. The galaxy had once believed humans were passive. Then it believed they were powerful. Now it understood something deeper. Power was never the point. Restraint was. And that restraint was what made them strong. The archive remained closed, not as a secret anymore, but as a reminder. Humans did not rule the galaxy because they did not need to. They had already proven something far greater. The strongest civilization was not the one that conquered. It was the one that could, and chose not to.